Here is another work by Jan van Eyck. This is titled Portrait of a Man. And then self-portrait? Question mark? We're pretty sure this is a self-portrait of him, but we're not positive. Jan van Eyck was known to do many of these individual portraits of men and women, and this one is a stunning example of it. Here we have the painting in its original frame, which is important because remember that these artworks were not displayed on digital screens. Instead, the artist is going to be taking into consideration your entire experience of the piece, the lighting of it, the framing of it, and here this gold gilt frame has letters painted on it that look like they've been carved. So Jan van Eyck has added this additional level of illusion where the paint on the frame looks like it's chiseled into the wood of the frame. On the top, in Greek letters, it reads Als ik kan, which is Dutch for as I can, or as I Van Eyck can. So we have this interesting blend. He's using the Dutch language, but Greek letters. A blend of a Greek language understanding and spoken, it's speaking out in Dutch. As I can, as I Van Eyck can. What does he mean by that? We'll discuss that a little bit further. And then on the bottom, written in Latin, so not Greek, but the language of the ancient Romans is Latin. And in Latin, he writes, Jan van Eyck made me on the 21st of October, 1433. See that? 33, the 21st of October. 1433, 21st October. So again, he's using another language. Latin, Greek letters, plus when you speak it, it sounds Dutch. What is he saying about himself as an artist? Well, what we can understand immediately is that he knows how to read and write Greek and Latin. Renaissance, anybody? Remember? A revival, a rebirth of the Greek and the Latin languages, the ideas presented within them. So here, Jan van Eyck is saying, even in this frame, I'm telling you, I know Greek, I know Latin, and I obviously know Dutch because I'm from Flanders and I speak Dutch. If we think about this as a self-portrait and as I can, what art historians believe is that this is the words of Jan van Eyck. He's saying, I can do this. I can paint this. It's a statement of his talent as a painter. Whew. It's amazing. Let's get into the details so that you can be just as blown away as I am. First of all, what he has on his head is called a chaperon. And here, I've given you another example from the time of a man wearing one. It consists of a headpiece and then a large swath of fabric that's attached, and then it can be used in two different ways. You can either drape it around your neck like you see here and act like a scarf, keeping you warm, or if it's hot, depending on the weather, you can also pull it up and tie it into these elaborate knots like you see in Jan van Eyck's portrait. The reason I bring this up is because sometimes this painting is also titled Man with a Red Turban. And I don't want you to get confused with the use of the term turban. It's technically a chaperon, which is a very common, very expensive hat that would have been worn in the Renaissance period. So like you see here, this nobleman, he's got this very elaborate folds of his black fabric chaperon. And then here's another one. This is a portrait of Philip the Good. He is the Duke of Burgundy during this time. He's the grandson to Philip the Bold. And you can see he's got a chaperone on as well. Now, they did serve a function, right, to keep your head protected and keep you warm, but also they serve as a status symbol because fabric is crazy expensive. And so to have excess amounts of fabric just on your head is a statement of your wealth. And then oftentimes these chaperones can get really elaborate, not only with the patterning of the fabric, but also they could add tassels and knots and stitchings, and then the way that you would tie them and knot them around. It is a status symbol. So when we look at Jan van Eyck in this self-portrait, not only is he making a claim to his abilities as an artist, but his status as an artist. He's making an argument that artists are not just there as craftsmen, good at their work, but this requires education, Greek and Latin, and then this kind of clever blending of reality that the sitter is then speaking to the viewer. It is an elevated status to be an artist. And so to show himself with this elaborate chaperone is to add to the idea that he is of a higher status because he is a talented artist. I love this detail here. Again, he's using oil paint to create these luscious, thick, kind of luminous folds of the red fabric, and then beautiful chiaroscuro, right? And then remember another characteristic of the High Renaissance, extreme detail, and that triangular heavy drapery. Yep, that's what we're seeing here. I love this detail because not only do we have the attention to the eyes, but the wrinkles, and then we can even understand like his bloodshot veins in the white of his eyes. He's not being not airbrushed. I mean, he's not airbrushing out the wrinkles or anything like that, but he's not ignoring these elements of reality so that whenever you look as a viewer at it, while your eye might not be picking up those subtle tonal differences of his iris or the wrinkle and fold of his nose, it does come together as a whole to be extremely realistic, extremely vivid, and therefore very powerful, convincing piece. And then again, let's think about it. As I can. I, Van Eyck, can make this, right? Now I said he's known for doing a lot of these portraits where he has this direct light and then a flat background. And the figures are in a 3/4 pose, meaning they stand at not directly facing, but not completely in profile. So these are just a few more of Jan van Eyck's pieces. So you see what I mean? Like they're not profile, they're not frontal, they're 3/4. And this pulls back to the ancient Romans. They like to do portraits like this sometimes. So we have this 3/4 view, and then we have flat background, a direct light that creates this gorgeous chiaroscuro. I like this one here. You see all those elaborate folds on his chaperone? Nice, right? And then I also would like you to call your attention to this specific pairing. Yes, we already looked at this one, but this is believed to be his wife. Her name is Margaret. And we see these in very similar frames against a black background and elaborate headpieces, fur-lined collars. So he's making this connection of husband and wife, but also the elevated status of their family in society. Beautiful, beautiful portraits. Oh, and then one more thing. It is housed at the National Gallery in London, and this is me visiting it in 2019, being pretty silly with it. And I wanted to show you it in terms of its size, and I couldn't get much closer. But guess what it's next to? Yeah, the National Gallery in London has both of these Jan van Eycks, and they put them right next to each other. So when you go, you'll see everybody's all impressed by this one, and they're often ignoring it, ignoring Jan van Eyck over here, but he's totally watching and judging all of us.